What was once a grey desert has become the driving force of the world economy in just a century. And that has been possible through crude oil. This crude oil has changed the face of the Middle East. Compared to any other region in the world, the Middle East is the most cost-effective in terms of oil extraction costs. For example, in Saudi Arabia, it costs only $3 to $10 to extract a barrel or 159 liters of oil. In the case of Russia, it costs $10 to $25. In the case of Venezuela, it costs $20 to $40. And in the case of America, it costs $30 to $60. That means that American oil extraction is the most expensive. On the other hand, the main reason why the cost of extracting oil in the Middle East is the lowest is that the oil in that region is not very deep and is stored in huge reserves. In addition to the low cost of extracting oil, the Middle East also has almost half of the world's total oil reserves in this region. Now you may be wondering, how or why did the Middle East accumulate so many oil reserves? And what is the difference between Middle Eastern oil and oil from other parts of the world? Today's video answers various questions related to Middle Eastern oil. It is no coincidence that the Middle East contains almost half of the world's total oil reserves. It is a result of millions of years of geological processes. About 100 to 200 million years ago, the current Middle East region was under a shallow and warm sea called Tethys. In this warm environment, a large amount of seaweed, plankton, and microscopic animals bred, which later died over time and accumulated on the seafloor. As a result, a large amount of oil was produced under the Tethys Sea. The land on which the current Middle East is located is called the Arabian Plate. 50 to 6 million years ago, this Arabian Plate separated from Africa and began to move northward.
Later, it collided with the Eurasian Plate. As a result, the sediments several kilometers thick at the bottom of the Tethys Sea began to compress under great pressure. As a result, the seabed gradually started to rise upwards, which is called uplift. As a result of this process, huge mountains have been formed in the northeast of the Middle East. An example is the Zagros Mountains. As a result of the collision of the two plates, the Tethys Sea narrowed, the water moved away, and the seabed permanently rose up. Now, as the bottom of the Tethys Sea transformed into the land of the Middle East, the oil formed under the Tethys Sea came under the soil of the Middle East. This is the secret of getting more oil in the Middle East. A few more things besides this. There is, which makes this oil in large reservoirs and easily extractable. The entire system where mineral oil or gas is stored after it is formed underground is called the petroleum system. The two most important parts of this system are the source rock and the cap rock. The rock in which seaweed and plankton are trapped is called the source rock. These are usually fine-grained sedimentary rocks. After the oil is formed in this rock, it cannot move or come out through the rock. As a result, the pressure inside the rock layer increases. As a result, cracks form in the rock and the oil starts to come out and come up. In the Middle East, this sedimentary rock is of very good quality. Usually, such source rocks contain 1 to 2% organic carbon by mass. There, the amount of this organic carbon in the Middle Eastern rocks is more than 5%. After the oil comes out of the source rock, this oil starts coming up, because the density of the oil is low, and we know that low-density objects want to stay up. Now, as a result of the tendency of the oil or gas to come up, the oil starts rising through various cracks in the ground. Lie now, if the oil or gas doesn't encounter any obstacles on this journey, the oil rises to the surface. This results in wastage of oil and gas. That means, to get oil or gas in a controlled manner, the oil and gas have to be trapped underground. And this is done by the cap rock. Cap rock is a layer of rock in which oil cannot create any cracks. Result, under the pressure of the oil. This rock is bent like a cap. As a result, it is called cap rock. Now, as a result of the rock layer, or rock layer bending like a cap, a kind of reservoir is formed there in which an unimaginable amount of oil accumulates. The size of this reservoir can be larger than a city. Under the soil of the Middle East, just above the oil layer, there is a huge hard layer of salt which does not allow the oil to come up.
Salt is the best caprock in the world, because it is flexible like plastic. As a result, even if there is an earthquake or tectonic movement underground, cracks do not easily form in the salt layer. Result, oil is not wasted. Oil is beautifully preserved under salt. In addition to having ideal source rocks and cap rocks in the Middle East, there are huge anticlines, or dome-shaped folds, formed underground due to the collision of tectonic plates. That is, the African, Arabian, and Eurasian plates. These naturally formed domes act as huge reservoirs of oil underground. As a result, oil extraction in the Middle East is much easier and cheaper. The terrain of the Middle East has been stable for a long time. As a result, oil reserves have not been destroyed by natural disasters or major volcanic eruptions. That means the ancient warm Tethys Sea, abundant marine fossils, hard layers of salt, ideal source rocks, and cap rocks. The right combination of all these has made the Middle East the world's largest oil reserve. 4 of the world's 5 largest oil fields are located in the Middle East. Gawa oil field. This oil field, located in Saudi Arabia, was discovered in 1948. It is the world's largest oil field. It is about 280 kilometers long and 30 kilometers wide. It has 75 to 80 billion barrels of oil reserves. Bergen oil field. It was discovered in Kuwait in 1938. It is the world's second largest oil field. Its reserves are 66 to 70 billion barrels. Safania oil field. It was discovered in Saudi Arabia in 1951. It is the world's largest offshore oil field. Its reserves are about 50 billion barrels. Rumaila oil field. It was discovered in Iraq in 1953. Its reserves are 40 to 45 billion barrels. Kashagan oil field. It was discovered in Kazakhstan in 2000. Its reserves are 30 to 35 billion barrels. Apart from this, the Upper Zakum oil field in the United Arab Emirates was discovered in the 1960s. Its reserves are 50 to 60 billion barrels. However, the amount of recoverable oil is 20 to 25 billion barrels. The first commercial oil discovery in the Middle East was in Iran. British citizen William Knox Darcy received permission to explore for oil in Persia from the then Iranian emperor, the Shah of Persia, in 1901. After several years of unsuccessful attempts, oil was discovered in a place called Masjid-e-Sulaiman in Iran in 1908. As a result, the Anglo-Persian Oil Company was formed, which is today's famous British Petroleum, or BP. After Iran, oil was discovered in Iraq in 1927. However, the discovery of oil in Saudi Arabia was the biggest turning point in the history of the Middle East. In 1933, the American company Standard Oil of California began exploring for oil in Saudi Arabia. After 5 years of failure and huge expenses, oil was discovered in the Dammam No. 7 well in 1938. Although there is a lot of oil in the Middle East, these oil fields were initially dominated by foreigners. Because at that time, the Middle Eastern countries were poor. They did not have the necessary capital and advanced drilling technology to extract oil. Also, there was no international market for selling the extracted oil. As a result, Middle Eastern oil was discovered through the money and technology invested by foreigners. And this is why foreigners dominated the oil fields in the beginning. Oil can be divided into different categories based on the properties of mineral oil. For example, there are 4 types of oil based on density: light crude oil, medium crude oil, heavy crude oil, extra heavy crude oil. The API gravity system is used to measure how light or heavy an oil is compared to water. This is the formula for determining API gravity. The API value of an oil is obtained by determining the main part of this formula, that is, specific gravity. Specific gravity is the ratio of the density of the extracted oil to the density of water at a temperature of 60 degrees Fahrenheit. For example, if the density of the extracted oil is 850 kilograms per cubic meter, then the API for the extracted oil is 34.97. That means it is light crude oil. If the API value is less than 10, it is called extra heavy crude oil. If the API value is from 10 to 22.3, it is called heavy crude oil. If the API value is from 22.3 to 31.1, it is called medium crude oil. And if the API value is above 31.1, it is called light crude oil. The American Petroleum Institute invented this scale. As a result, it is called API gravity for short. Depending on this API value of oil, what will be the quality of the oil? What will be its price? In which refineries can it be refined? The amount of sulfur in the extracted oil is also an important factor. There are 2 types of crude oil based on the amount of sulfur: sweet crude oil, sour crude oil. Oil with a sulfur content below 0.5% is called sweet crude oil. This oil is relatively environmentally friendly and easy to refine. On the other hand, oil with a high sulfur content is called sour crude oil. This type of oil is difficult to refine. It is also expensive. The quality of oil mainly depends on API and sulfur. There are some other factors besides this, but these 2 things are the most important. The higher the API of crude oil and the lower the sulfur content, the better the quality of crude oil. Now let's see what the quality of oil is like in different regions of the world. American oil is mainly known as West Texas Intermediate, or WTI, which is considered one of the best quality oils in the world. This oil is very light. Its API value is 39 to 45, and the sulfur content is only 0.24%. That means American oil is light and sweet, from which high-quality gasoline and diesel can be made, although American oil extraction is the most expensive in the world.
Oil from the Middle East, especially Saudi Arabia, is called Arab Light, although the oil from this region is slightly heavier than American oil. Its API range is usually between 27 and 35. However, the API value may vary slightly from country to country. The sulfur content is about 1.5% to 2%. This means that Middle Eastern oil is mainly medium to heavy and sour in nature. The cost of extracting oil in this region is the lowest in the world. As a result, oil prices increase if Middle Eastern oil doesn't reach the world market. By international standards, Russian oil is known as medium and sour. Its API value is 31 to 32. The sulfur content is 1.3% to 1.5%. Russia mixes its heavy and high sulfur oil from the Ural-Volga region and light oil from western Siberia and exports it to the world market under the name Ural. One of the heaviest oils in the world is Venezuelan oil. Oil from the Orinoco Belt region is so heavy that its API value is only 8 to 10. That means this oil is almost as heavy as water. It is a lot like tar. Venezuelan oil contains a lot of sulfur. It also contains metallic elements, such as nickel and vanadium. This oil is difficult to use directly in refineries, so this oil has to be mixed with light oil from other countries and refined. Or it has to be upgraded in a very complex process. Although Venezuela has huge oil reserves, its quality is relatively low. And refining it is the most challenging. Although American oil is the best in terms of oil quality, extracting American oil is more expensive than any other country in the world. Now you may be wondering, why is that? Oil is usually stored in huge underground reservoirs. Oil can be easily brought up by installing pipes there. But American oil is no longer limited to reservoirs. In fact, initially American oil was also in reservoirs. But since 1970, due to extensive oil extraction, American reservoirs started to run out of oil. As a result, America became dependent on the Middle East for oil. At the same time, research into finding oil from alternative sources also began. Then, they discovered that a lot of oil and gas was trapped deep inside the hard rock called shale. After 2000, America improved the technology for extracting oil and gas from this shale. One of these technologies is hydraulic fracturing or fracking. In this method, water, sand, and chemicals are injected into the shale at high pressure. In this, the shale bursts and oil and gas come out. The second technology is horizontal drilling. First, drilling is done vertically deep in the ground. Then drilling is done horizontally across a large area. Through these two technologies, America has become the world's top oil producer from an importing country in the last 15 years. Currently, about 60% of America's total crude oil production comes from this shale. The technology used to extract oil or gas from shale is very expensive now. In addition, most of the oil comes out of the shale in the first 1 to 2 years. That is, production decreases very quickly. In addition, labor wages in America are very high. Along with that, strict safety and environmental laws have to be followed, which further increases the cost of oil production. For these reasons, American oil production is the most expensive in the world. Our daily necessities come from crude oil. Crude oil is needed for many things, including fuel, plastics, fertilizers, cosmetics, medicines. Now the question is, how is this crude oil produced underground? Also, how are gas and coal produced? And how are they extracted and separated into components like petrol, diesel, kerosene? Subscribe to this channel to get answers to many more questions related to crude oil. Thank you very much for watching the full video.